We continue now at the top of Daf Testament Beis in Meseches, Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 79b. On the previous summit, the Gemara was dealing with the opinion of Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. There's a brisa which brings Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon who says, let's say a person is makdish something, and then later there's something that is contained within it, so there's also going to be me'ilah on that which is contained within it. And Rabbah explained that Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon means when we're talking about a sada or an elon, let's say a field or a tree, and there's later growth, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon means to say that that later growth, there's me'ilah on that as well. But let's say it would be something that doesn't grow. Let's say, for example, it is a bore, and then later it's filled with water, for example. So there Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon would say that there is no din of me'ilah on the water that comes into the pit later on. That's how Rabbah explained Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. And Abaye asks on Rabbah, how can you say that's the case? Because there's another brisa which says that even in a situation where a person is makdish something that's already full, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon is machlif, which the Gemara understands that to mean that even that which is contained within it is not included in the me'ilah. And so the Gemara now asks, V'ibis sada v'ilah. Now, if you, Rabbah, are saying that Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon is talking about a field and a tree, amai machlif, why would he switch it? As the Rashbam explains, V'ibis sada v'ilan pligi le'el gabe hekdeshan reikonin. If they're arguing, the Tanoim are arguing earlier in that earlier brisa, in the case where the person was makdish it when it was empty, v'hu adin b'seifin, that's exactly the same also in the other brisa that was brought later on. We're always talking about growth. So amai machlif, so why would he say that in a case where it was already grown, there's no me'ilah? Kol shekein hacha demo'alin b'mesha b'sochen. If it's already grown, for sure we should say there's me'ilah. The Yikatarti, you have two reasons to say there's me'ilah. Gidulei hekdesh, number one, it's growth of hekdesh, which should have me'ilah. V'gam hekdesh hakol b'yachad, and plus he was makdish everything at once. So it wouldn't make any sense to say, this is what again Abaye is asking on Rabbah, it wouldn't make sense to say that the case that Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon was talking about was by Sada and Elon. And so the Gemara continues, Elam Rabbah, rather Rabbah says, Machlokas bebor v'shovach. Actually the Machlokas Tanoim, when we're talking about somebody's makdish something when it's empty and then later it becomes full, that Machlokas actually is by bor v'shovach, talking about a pit that later gets filled with water, or let's say you're talking about a shovach, a dovecote that later has doves. Aval besada v'ilon divrei hakol mo'alin bohen. But when we're talking about a field and a tree, everybody agrees there's going to be me'ilah in the field and the tree. Uva mesha b'sochen, and whatever later thing there is within it, because it's considered to be just growth. And when you're talking about growth, we say there is me'ilah. And so now we still have to understand what's going on in these brises in the sheet of Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. Ubebor v'shovach b'reikonin b'mai pligi, uva melein b'mai pligi. Well, if these two brises are talking about a pit and a dovecote, in one case you are makdish when they were empty, and in one case you are makdish when they were full, what exactly is the root of the machlokas? And the Gemara explains, Bereikonin pligi, in the case where you're makdish it when it was empty, talking about a bor and shovach, so there's a machlokas beplugsa to Rabbi Meir v'Rabbanan. It's a machlokas between really the same machlokas that we find between Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanan. The Tanakama savar Rabbanan. The Tanakama holds like the Rabbanan. The Amri ein adam makne davar shelo boli olam. The Rabbanan say in general, as a general rule, a person can't be makne something. You can't give something over, transfer ownership on something that doesn't yet exist. And so therefore, since the Tanakama holds ein adam makne davar shelo boli olam, so if you are makdish, let's say, the bore when it's empty, that does not include something that's not yet there. It doesn't include, for example, the water that's later going to come in. That's the opinion of the Tanakama in the first brisa. For Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon savar, and Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon holds Rebbe Meir. He holds like Rebbe Meir. To Amar adam makne davar shelo boli olam. He says that a person can give over ownership to somebody, can transfer ownership even by something that does not yet exist. And that's why Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon says in the first brisa, even if you are makdish the pit when it's empty and later water comes into the pit, still we're going to say that the water also has a din of me'ilah. But the Gemara questions this. Amor da shamat leila Rabbi Meir. We understand that Rabbi Meir says a person can be makna something that doesn't yet exist. Kagon peiros dekel, for example, let's say the fruits of a palm tree. Da avidi da'asu, that's expected that it's going to come. But hani, but over here, mi yemar da'asu, who says the water is going to come into the pit at all? Why would we compare the two cases? And the Gemara says, no, we could have a comparison. Amar Rava says, mashkachas lo b'mayim haboyin derech hatzeiro. It could be water that's coming through the chutzner. It's expected that it's going to come labor into the pit. V'yonim haboyin derech shovcho l'shovach. There's another nearby dovecote, and the doves come from there to this dovecote. Again, it's expected, and so therefore that's why Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon is saying, even though you are makdish these items, let's say the bor and the shovach when they were empty, still we say adam makna davar shelo boli olam. And if things later come into the water, comes into the pit, the doves come into the dovecote, those will be included in the halachas of me'ilah. And the Gemara continues with Malayim b'mai pligi. Okay, so there's a later machlokas then when a person is makdish when the item's already full, and there Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon was machlef. He even went so far as to say that which is contained within there is no halacha of meila. What are they arguing about over there? Amar Rava says, Kagon shehikdish bor stam. The case over there is the person was makdish just a bor, and he didn't have any specifics. He just said he's makdish the pit. For Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon savar lo kavua. Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, he holds like his father. Diamar donin din gavoa midin hedyot. His father holds, meaning Rebbe Shimon holds, that you can learn what the halacha is by hekdish from what the halacha would be by hedyot, by a regular sale. We learn from regular sales to what's going to be the halacha by hekdish. And so we say as follows, Madin Hedyo, just like, let's say there would be a sale in such a situation, you sell a pit. So Matzi Yomer, the person can say, Bira Zvini Lach, Milo Zvini Lach. The seller can say, I was selling you the pit, I wasn't selling you the water. The water was not included in the sale. That's what Rabbi Shimon would say by a sale. So Av Din Gavoa, so too, when it comes to Hekdish, Bira Akdish, the person was Makdish, the bor, Maya Lo Akdish. But when it comes to the water, that was not included in the Hekdish. And the Rashbam explains, Savar lo kavua, again, Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon holds like his father, Rebbe Shimon, Beshili hamocher es habayis, this is at the end of hamocher es habayis, Diamar hamakdish es hasada, lo hikdish al chorav hamurkav. Rebbe Shimon over there says, a person's makdish a field, he's only makdish the chorav hamurkav, that refers to the developed carob tree. Umefarshim beGemara desvira ba'ayin ra makdish. The Gemara there explains that Rebbe Shimon holds that the person, when he's makdish, he's not makdish generously. Didon and din gavor midin hedyot. The idea is we learn out how it works by hektish from how it works in a regular sale. V'hilkach, therefore, kiechi the hedyot hamocher bor stam lo macher es meimov. If a person in a regular case of a sale would sell a pit, the water is not included. Kedim mefarshin besamach. We're about to explain why that is. With the lokam asnisin, this would actually not follow our Mishnah earlier. The amar macher bor macher meimov. In the Mishnah earlier, it actually said when you sell a pit, you do include in the sale the water. But here we're going to say that there's another shita that the water is not included. So avdin gavoa, so too when you're makdish, the water is not included. And the Rashbam explains umiu, nevertheless, heichud de'ein bo mayim, what in a case where there was no water and the water only later came, which there we said Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon would say the water is included in the hektish, there is meila. So in that situation, b'shas hektish, in the case where there's no water at the time he was makdish, kodshi hamayim, there the water is considered hektish haboyin la'achar mikan, the water that comes later. The water that comes later on is included in meila. The adam makna davar shelo baliolim, because again, as we said, a person is makna even something that doesn't yet exist. V'daito hayel hakdisha, the person was having in mind that the later water that would come would be included. The bedavar shelo zachabo adayin lekal meimer ayin ra. The key point is when it's something that he doesn't yet have, he can't say he's being stingy about it. He doesn't even have it right now. Aval keshabor mole mayim, but when the pit is filled with water, v'hamayim v'abor shalohen, and it all belongs to him. V'uhik the shabor, and he says he's being makdish the bor, equal memer. So then already you could say the hamayim shayar liatzmo, he was keeping the water for himself. Now what about the rabbanon that argue? For rabbanon de pligiola, the rabbanon that argue in Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, sviru lahud ba'ayin yafe makdish, they hold that no person when he's makdish generously, therefore the water is included. Inami or sviru lahud Rabbi Nosson, could be that they hold like Rabbi Nosson, to amar machar bor machar meimav, who says that if a person sells a pit, the water is included, v'lo gara hektish mehedyot, and then you wouldn't say that hektish is any worse than by a regular sale. But the Gemara continues, v'din hedyot lo, but in the case of a regular sale, is that really true that the water is not included? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah on the contrary, as the Rashbam just said, machar bor, machar meimav, a person sells a pit, the water is included in the sale. And the Gemara says to that, Amar Rava says, Masnisan Yechidohi, our Mishnah, that's just the opinion of a Yochid, it's just an individual opinion. The Tanyas we learned in a Brisa, Machar Bor, Lo Machar Meimav, the Brisa says that according to the Tanakama, a person sells a pit, the water is not included, it's only the opinion of Rabbi Nosson, that's really our Mishnah. Rabbi Nosson says, Machar Bor, Machar Meimav, a person sells a pit, he also sells its water, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Amud Aleph.